Bam.
This is Bruce Vilanch, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Hey, man, I appreciate you coming on the show. You joined a crew of incredible people that we've had on the show. We're coming up really fast on 10 years of doing this thing. And
Amazing. 10 years? Nice.
I know.
I didn't know podcasts were around 10 years. Where have I been?
Where have I been? Who am I?
Holy mackerel, Andy. Pardon me. Cancelable language.
That's right. You don't want to get canceled.
No.
I want to get
but I'm so old. I quote Amos and Andy. It's terrible.
You know what?
It's a sickness. It's a sickness.
That's hilarious. The other night we saw Dave Chappelle, and Michael Shea was the last comedian before him, and he opens up with, "I missed the word retard." You know, and
Michael Shea from SNL.
Yeah, it was a great set, and like we get so bent out of shape on certain words, and there's a lot of words.
The word retard.
Yeah. Well, and then the first joke, he's like, "If you're late to class, what do they call you? Tardy." Yeah. It gets funny fast. I don't want to steal Michael Shea's bits, but where I wanted to start is we had Allie Willis on the show. Now, you and Allie, you have a similar appearance in the way you like with the glasses.
My doppelganger. We wound up looking like each other for years.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
It didn't start that way. She got much more eccentric than I did. We were always kind of eccentric dressers and had a look, but I was already into the glasses and stuff, but she like full bore into the look. And at a certain point, we wound up looking a lot alike. What can I tell you?
A lot alike. You guys are also very similarly talented in ways that I guess there's a lot of similarities between you two. So I don't know if you know this, maybe you do, but she wrote the theme song for Friends.
That's right. Yeah.
I'll
be there for you.
Yeah. And she owed like a third of a song to Sony or something. They're like, "Hey, you owe us, complete this contract, we'll do the next thing." And so she's like, "Well, I'll do it," but she's so damn good at writing songs. She writes one of the most successful songs in a career full of, Hall of Fame level songs.
Oh yeah, she's written a whole bunch of stuff. When I knew her, she was a publicist. She was in New York working for Epic Records, and I was in the Chicago Tribune, and I was writing about rock albums, and she was sending me rock albums, and she would with these hilarious descriptions that she would write of these. I mean, it was all like, first of all, it was the '70s, and as I've often said, if you remember the '70s, you weren't there. So she was baked in New York, and I was baked in Chicago, and we were exchanging these things that kept coming out, and she finally said, "Well, I really want to be a star," and so she because she was at Epic, she got this deal to do this album called Child Star, and it didn't work out, for her in performance, but it sure worked out every other way, and her life became performance art.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Her house. I don't know. Have you ever been to her house before for one of her parties or anything?
Yeah. I only knew her 50 years. She just died.
Yeah.
I mean, I really did know her for 50 years. Get my digitalis quick.
Yeah.
Let me get that again.
You guys both wrote a lot of stuff for other people who are very successful. Obviously, you've worked for Whoopi and a whole bunch of other people. I mean, you wrote for Oscars. It's incredible. What is it about what you guys do that allows you to write for whoever's on? It doesn't matter, whoever it is, Earth, Wind and Fire, Bette Midler, whoever it is, you two can write something that they can perform. What is the difference between that skill and the two of your skills?
Well, I mean, there's almost no difference. That we obviously both know how to listen, and we understand who we're writing for. And I hear their voices, and I write in their voice, and I have that facility. And Allie has the facility of knowing what the artist can do that she's going to write the song for. Unless, I mean, she may go off and write something in the dark, and not know where it's going to go. But I'm guessing she generally knew where she was writing the songs for specific reasons. A lot of times for movies, and she had a certain sound that she was attracted to, and I guess I do too. I have a certain kind of comedy stuff I'm attracted to. But as I've said many times, it's kind of like Bob Mackie or Givenchy. I mean, Bob Mackie would not make the same outfit for Cher that he would make for Lizzo.
Right.
because they're two distinctive different body types. They may have the same sensibility. They may both want to be in spandex, but he has to design it differently for each of them. And that's what what we do. I mean, you wouldn't give the same material to to a different person. I mean, you write. I mean, obviously, if you're ready for Earth, Wind, and Fire, you're ready for Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Yeah.
But I don't know exactly how. It's not fair. I don't know exactly how a lot of Allie's business worked. I mean, how she got the tunes that she got. I only know one song that I slightly inspired.
You inspired a song by Allie Willis?
Not, I didn't really inspire it. It was a work of art that I had that inspired it. She came over to the house, and I had 1/3 of a triptych by Keith Haring. And Keith Haring did Radiant Baby, and that was one of his characters. It was graffiti kind of stuff, and in mine there was there were three different Radiant Babies, and my Radiant Baby was dancing, and so he was dancing, and he had energy was shooting out of him, and he said, and those were neutrons, and he called it Neutron Baby. And Allie came over and she looked at it. She said, "Oh, he's doing the neutron dance." And we laughed about that. And the next day she called me. She said, "I wrote a song called Neutron Dance. And I've given it, and the girls are going to do it." The girls being the Pointer Sisters, who were very hot. I worked on their stage show, and Allie worked on wrote music for them. And of course it became, and it was for Beverly Hills Cop. Oh, it's for this Eddie Murphy movie where he plays this Detroit cop who goes to Beverly Hills. It's a fish out of water picture, she said.
Yeah.
Which it was. I mean, it's a fish out of. It's a very common description of things in Hollywood when you talk about stories. Fish out of water. Goldie Hawn joins the army. Fish out of water.
Yeah.
Way back to 1980. That was around the same period. What can I tell you?
Is it possible to remember the 80s or just not the 70s?
Well, I think you're older, and so you're more medicated and less sedated. so you can conjure up memories of the 80s.
Yeah.
I think the major damage has been done.
So when I started this question off, you took it in a direction because I hadn't even considered this. I'm curious about the difference between you and Whoopi, or Earth, Wind, and Fire and Allie. What's the difference there? Why does someone incredible like Whoopi, or a group as incredible as Earth, Wind, and Fire, why do they need an Allie or a Bruce? Like what is that you two bring? I mean, I get why Sony needs you, or the Oscars need you, because they need someone who's pro, right?
Speaking in a general sense, and I don't know that music creation is the same as comedy creation, okay. But I would think that a general thing might apply in certainly in the comedy area. When you start out, nobody wants you. They really don't give a shit. You have a lot of time to write, and basically you write and you get up and you do stuff, or if you're a performer, that's what you do. And if you catch on, suddenly you don't have that much time to write anymore, because you're very busy in what Joni Mitchell called the star-making machinery. You're very busy being a name, you're a commodity, you're a brand, whatever it is. And the time you used to have to sit and write has gone away, because you're busy doing interviews, you're busy doing benefits, you're busy doing a whole lot of other stuff. And that's when you take on a collaborator. Somebody who is in sync with you, who can keep feeding the machine, and for different people, it varies with me. With Bette Midler, who was the first person I worked for, it was always about promoting the music. There were once she had her deal at Atlantic, and she was committing to X number of albums. She had to do a show. Back in the day, you would tour to sell albums. Now you sell albums to tour. I mean, you make the money on the tour, because there's no record business anymore. But back then, you would tour to be seen, and they would go buy your record. So she always had to have material to introduce the music, to do in between the music and stuff like that. And with comedians who were stand-up, they just needed more material. I mean, at the beginning, Whoopi wrote a whole bunch of character pieces for herself, because she wasn't what we would call a stand-up. She was an actress, and she would get up and she would inhabit these characters. And of course, the show that Mike Nichols saw her do, that he then put on Broadway, that got Steven Spielberg to see her, who put her in The Color Purple, was all about her playing 6 different characters.
Yes.
And but when suddenly she was Whoopi Goldberg and she was making appearances as Whoopi Goldberg, and she had no Whoopi Goldberg material. So we were working on that. She was hosting things, emceeing things, and cutting ribbons and kissing babies. So I became a collaborator on that level with her, and it moved on like that. And I think probably with Ali, I think it's a similar thing. Although Earth, Wind, and Fire, I mean, they generate all their own stuff, but they bring in people, I guess, for the same reason. They bring in people to give them a new slant on things. But she also was writing for a lot of people who were not writers. I mean, for example, the Pointers didn't write.
Right.
They were, Richard Perry found them. I mean, well, Dave Rubinson, who started them, but when Richard gave them their initial hits were David, their manager, and but he didn't write either. I mean, I don't think they were all stuff that was brought in by the A&R guys. The A&R artists and repertoire. Every record label has them, and like they're finding material for people to do. That was a long-winded explanation.
No, but you know what? Here's the thing I love about all of this:
having caffeine.
We get to keep Ali alive too with these kind of conversations, because you just cannot, like, people.
Oh, she won't die. I mean, she was the greatest self-promoter ever. I mean, relentless self-promotion, and you just had to kind of go with it, because that was Ali, and that was actually part of her charm. And also, it was like aggravating, because you always knew that it was about some project, and she was determined to make herself a big star. And it hasn't died. Prudence, her partner, has now been doing a documentary that I've now shot many days on in various incarnations with a lot of people, Lily Tomlin and Pamela Adlon, and a great group of Ali fans, Leslie Ann Warren, who and we're all anxiously anticipating to seeing how this is, and if it really is good, and it will tap that vein. I mean, and it will ironically open her up to a whole new world of people who didn't know her at all, who only know her through this documentary, and will then go back and pick up on all of her work.
A couple more just real quick notes about Ali. When we went to her house, and you've been to her house, for all of you guys listening out there, Ali's house was filled with stuff, and it was artistic, and there was a giant bowl of gum and candy and all of these things. And so there's so much stuff. There's so much stimulation. There's bowling balls in the front yard, that when we sat down and got ready to record, then we noticed that the entire wall of one of her rooms in her house is covered in platinum and a few gold records. I mean,
yeah.
Just a remarkable.
Yeah, in the studio. Yeah. Well, her house was the shrine to kitsch. Ali was a connoisseur of bad taste. She loved any of that stuff that was always junk and disposable in the real world, but commented upon itself. An example is I was on the road with Bette years ago, and we were in St. Petersburg, Florida, and we came across an item shop. You don't see them much anymore, but there were places where people, now it's garage sales, but back in the day, people would go in and they couldn't pawn stuff; they would just sell it to collectors, and they were like bizarre stuff that you want to get rid of. So in this item shop, we found a salt and pepper shaker set that was Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben.
Oh man!
I mean, which is, of course, even then was kind of racist.
Right.
I mean, they were still selling, pancakes and rice with them, but they were what Whoopi calls. She has a collection of them. It's called Negrobilia. It's all stuff that was either created for the black market, and by that I mean black people, not like the underground. But it was either for the black market or it was for it was like high style commenting. A lot of it came from Europe, from the Josephine Baker of it all, with very elegant black people. Anyway, so we got these. We said, this is for Ali. Ali will love this, because they're like in such terrible taste. And so I sent them to her, and then and she said, "Oh, thank you so much." And I went over there a few weeks later when I got back to the house, and I said, "So where are the salt and pepper shakers?" Oh, she said, "Oh, they're up there." And there was a shelf of Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben's salt and pepper shake. I mean, it ran the entire length of the kitchen. She had a collection of these things.
Yeah.
This was her house. It was an absolute shrine to bad taste and kitsch, but fabulous because it was overwhelming. I mean, she took this what she bought the house. She said to me, I'm Donna Reed. I'm living in the valley. So I bought this house because it had a wagon wheel planted in the lawn, which was like an old West, motif that people out in California had. And of course, she kept the wagon wheel, but then she got rid of the lawn. And it was then suddenly it was like a Japanese rock garden, but instead of rocks, there were bowling balls and gravel and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, she redid the house. She kept the bones of the house, which turned out to be, under all that Donna Reed stuff, a very like what we would now call a postmodern mid-century. And the whole house was like that. I mean, it was one thing after another. It was phenomenal. And that, fortunately, the house lives, and it will be in the documentary. I mean, every square inch of it is being shot as we speak.
When we were there, yeah, and you said like, I can think of one thing. We all have one thing, and mine was a very similar thing. It was some hair treatment sponsored by James Brown, and he's like, James Brown thing, and I'm like, oh my God, like this is just...
Whoopi has this in one of her houses. Whoopi has, but hers is very high end. It's like a lot of it is like huge billboards. Pepsodent used to have a black guy with incredibly white teeth. That was their logo because they wanted it so your teeth will be as white as this guy. It's like, to show you how white they are, we've made him black because the contract will get you to buy toothpaste.
Right.
But she's got a whole bunch of, but hers is it's very artsy. I mean, Allie's is really like it's like a garage sale on steroids. But I mean, it's incredible. And there are no ordinary chairs to sit in. Every chair has a story.
Yeah.
Every chair is like a prop from something or some kind of weird design that ran away with itself, and it's fun. It's fun to go to. Just, careful where you step.
I mean, she was such a force, and to hear you talk about all these things, but they're, it's really incredible. You've lived this incredible life. Do you still have the ability to stop and go, I can't believe I get to do this? Or
every day? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm just kind of amazed every day that, that I think about you. And sometimes it's, I'm unconscious about it. And other people point it out to me, and they'll say like, you knew Cary Grant, or Timothy Chalamet. It's like, well, yeah. I mean, and you forget this is the business we have chosen, Michael.
Yeah.
I'm watching The Offer there's a series about how they made The Godfather.
Yeah. What do you think of it?
It's wonderfully bad. I mean, it's a real Hollywood show. I mean, the funny part about it is I know enough about it to know that a lot of the stuff actually happened.
Right.
It's weirdly cast. I mean, the people who they have playing the people, with the exception of Matthew Good, who's Robert Evans to a T. Although Justin Chambers just showed up as Brando the other night, and he's great too. I mean, some of them are really terrific. I didn't know Joey Colombo, but I think Giovanna Ribisi is doing as good a job of playing Joey Colombo as anybody could. It's just it's a lot of dialogue that you question whether it was said the way it was said. Everything is heightened. And I always say scenes I never thought took place, but a lot of these scenes did take place, but I don't know that they said exactly. And a lot of it's from Al Ruddy's book. It's from Al Ruddy's memory of how things went down. So, but it's great fun to watch. I mean, for me, it's different for somebody. I mean, I'm watching it with a whole inside perspective.
Right.
I think it's a great entertainment. I think tune in, you'll have a good time watching it. And everybody knows The Godfather. So, and the funny thing is, the picture got made, and it's kind of like 1776, where you're sitting there watching it. Maybe they didn't sign this declaration. Maybe it's all a hoax. The musical, and then you realize no, it took a lot to get them to do it, but they did it, even though the end. But then the Titanic sinks,
yeah,
and you watch the story anyway.
When you see all the stuff that's being created in Hollywood and all the different platforms to go pitch to, Paramount Plus, ESPN Plus, plus everywhere. Is this a new golden age? Because a lot of things can get made now, and the big studios want to make remakes or reboots or the next
Yeah.
superhero film. So is this a
Well,
good era, or are we kind of sorting out
it's
what needs to happen for the next era?
well, it's funny because it wasn't until 2 weeks ago when the great Netflix correction happened, and
Mm,
and I think that some of the free spending will now stop, and they're laying people off of Netflix. I mean, Netflix was like uh, the goal. It changed everything because instead of you got a huge upfront and no back end, which meant that it took the risk out of it. You knew you were going to come out of it ahead, whether it was a hit or a miss, as opposed to the old studio system. That will probably change. That will get modified and all that. However, from the writer's perspective, it's a golden age because there is so much content. What happened was after the last writer's strike, or the writer's strike 20 years ago or 30 years ago, the networks discovered reality television,
mm,
which didn't need to be written technically, and so as a result, a lot of the opportunities dried up because everything was being done on the cheap and reality. And now there's a hunger for stories, and of course during the pandemic they were ravenous for stories. So a lot of stuff came back. Now it is a banner day for writers because you have to keep coming up with a scripted content, and that means more books get turned into movies and series and all that. As far as what they call the legacy studios now, the big studios, they've got they're multinationals and they're caught up in the tentpole movies. And so if you don't have a superhero movie, you're in trouble. It's very difficult to get anything done in any of those places if you don't have some kind of a franchise going, because that's where the big money is. And as we come back, as people start going back to the movies, um, uh, it will get bigger. It's sure now, although this Doctor Strange opening was gigantic over the weekend,
mhm.
and it's indicative, but it's a movie out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and all that. So the only person who's holding out for theatrical is Tom Cruise, who has got a 120-day window on Top Gun Maverick, which means they can't show it on any place but a theater for the first 4 months. For 4 months. And meaning that all the money, that's basically is because he gets his money off of the theatrical distribution. And part of the reason that Scarlett Johansson sued Disney was that was her deal on Black Widow, but they reneged on it because they put it on Disney Plus, and so she didn't have a shot at theatrical revenue, even though there was not that much available at the time. So I mean, I'm getting very arcane here, but what that means is, yeah, it's a golden age. But if you're going to make movies for people to see in theaters, you better have some kind of very high concept thing, because it's more difficult to get them to make those movies. But the good news is that everything is shifting. As the pandemic becomes something that we live with forever, um, people's habits will begin to go back to kind of what was normal, and so. But yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
every answer is long-winded. That's because of the caffeine.
Yeah, well, it
Sorry,
makes you a
folks.
great guest because I
I
I
wish I had
all
short. If I had short, pithy answers, I'd be
yeah.
running the.
No, I don't want you to I want you to be interesting, and that's exactly what you are. You've lived this incredible life where you know the business, you know the people, you've done the work. If you were gonna go back and do what you did again, would you pick the same kind of path, or would you find like a sweet gig writing for sitcoms for the next 50 years and know that you were always gonna have, solid because look, there's people in comedy who are like, this for me right now, kids, college, everything else. I just want, I want to write for a procedural. I want to write for a sitcom. And there's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with that. Yeah, would you
Well,
change it?
I tried all of that stuff, and that's how I wound up doing what I do. I do everything because a lot of that didn't work out. As Pauline Kael wrote, Hollywood is where you can be encouraged to death. So I wrote, 15 scripts. They were all bought and paid for, and several were greenlit and they fell apart. I did pilots that didn't go. I began to feel like maybe I'm the jinx, and so I was writing. I decided that every day would be something different. I would and then I had a performing career, and then Hollywood Squares came and made me a famous person. So, or an almost famous person. So then I had a whole other bunch of opportunities. I went to Broadway and Hairspray. I toured. I did all that stuff. But meanwhile, I'd written 25 Oscar shows. So I don't know that I would do anything different. Maybe I might, if I really thought about it, I might just have gone for an acting career instead. That was what I always really wanted. But at this point in my life, it's like, I got so many things to beat myself up for. I should beat myself up for that. Come on. Right. How many pizzas can you eat to make yourself feel better? Jesus Christ.
All of them. You can eat all of them. The life you led, so back to the Allie thing. Allie is a Hall of Fame songwriting personality. They don't really have that. Okay, look, you can win the Mark Twain Award, but that's for one person, one year. But we don't really have that kind of Hall of Fame thing. I would submit that you've had a Hall of Fame.
There's a songwriters hall. But are you on Allie's payroll? Why is this all about Allie?
No. But I'm bringing it back to you.
I know you weren't sleeping with us. So what is this all about?
No, but the Comedy Hall of Fame, like how do we capture, like, okay, we talk about
Carl. Well, Lucy Arnaz has got built a Comedy Hall of Fame in honor of her mother, Lucille Ball, in Jamestown, New York. And in fact, I'm supposed to be doing some kind of a fundraiser for it. Jay Leno is hosting it, and George Slaughter is producing it. And if I can do it in October, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
But the idea of a Comedy Hall of Fame is just kind of hilarious, isn't it? I mean, because at this point, especially because look at the trouble the Academy Museum is having. I mean, it's become the Academy Horror Story. It's woke house. It's the history of cinema crime. I mean, you're going to do a Comedy Hall of Fame, and what are you going to do? You're going to put people up in there so somebody can say, Woody Allen, he fucked his daughter. What do you mean? Yeah. It's going to be like that. It's going to be like there's going to be some shrill voice for every single person who's in there. Yeah. And especially, the people who you would put in the old school people are, push every single button in the woke universe. And, right now people are beyond woke. They're insomniacs. So, so I think probably it's not going to be the greatest idea, the easiest thing to get off the ground. A Songwriter Hall of Fame, there is one. And I performed with that particular benefit. I can't remember when, but I've done it. And ASCAP has got something, and BMI has got something, and the Grammy Legends and the Grammy Lifetime Achievements, and I don't know, probably somebody who prints sheet music has got a Hall of Fame going somewhere. I don't know.
But you don't think that fits for comedy? There's not a place to. I get the woke thing and all that, but is it not important to recognize people who've had these incredible careers? Again, like people have room for about 5 comedians in their head, and then that's it. Is it not worthy to celebrate what you guys do in your careers?
I think I just went through all that, didn't I?
Okay. All right. No, that's fine.
Forgive me, but
yeah. No, I hear you. Okay, so let's let that part go. If they did come up to you and say, "Hey, we'd like to give you the Mark Twain Award," though, would you even take that, or is it,
Of course, I would take it. What am I, a schmuck? Of course, it's not going to happen. So, it's kind of like, it's like, yeah. Suppose Ryan Gosling came up and said, I want to have sex with. Yeah. That's not going to happen. First of all, I have to step over the dead body of Eva Mendes, the number one, and say no. But so it's a thing. I've written the Mark Twain Prize. I've been on the Mark Twain Prize. I gave it to Whoopi, and I was on there. I wrote the show. When I worked on it with Letterman and with Carol Burnett and a few other people. But so it's not going to happen. So, but sure, offer it to me. I'll take it.
All right.
What have I got to? Let's see who shows up.
Let's talk a little bit about this woke stuff. Dave Chappelle tries to cross the line and does enough for certain groups of people. For other people, it's like, this is your job, to make us uncomfortable, to make us laugh at ourselves. Why is it that there's such a loud and powerful voice of people who, I don't know, I don't want to say they don't have a sense of humor, because obviously they do, but why are we paying so much attention to folks who are fringy at best?
Because they're loud. because they're loud, and because we're a guilt-ridden culture. Nobody wants to be the bad guy, and that's the problem with the left. I mean, with progressives, that we eat our own. They turn perfectly reasonable allies into enemies, and that's because they have this incredible sensitivity, and it's bred of experience. I mean, of being on the receiving end of the joke all the time. I mean, I'm a member of many minorities. I'm Jewish, I'm gay, I'm fat. I mean, every one of those things he gets shamed for at some place along the line. So I understand. And when they go after my minorities, I bristle as well. But at the same time, I believe in freedom of speech. I believe that free speech has consequences. Hate speech has consequences. And but there it is. You just have to deal with it. And I think that what I see happening now is pushback. Reasonable people are coming forward and saying, hang on a second. You're being unreasonable. You're being beyond. I mean, when you look at the Academy Museum, where the only mention of Louis B. Mayer is as a possible child molester of Judy Garland. I mean, this is a guy who created Hollywood.
Right.
There would be he created the Academy. This is the only mention of him in the museum. It's because the woke sensibility has taken over. Oh no, he's a bad guy. He's a bad guy. And there's always the loudest voice, as somebody's pointed out. The loudest voice is the one that you hear. That kind of goes without saying.
You bring up Louis B. Mayer, and I also think about Bill Cosby, and you don't want to justify bad behavior, but you also have to say what an incredible life and the power of what he did. He buys the intercom for that Martin Luther King speaks over. He takes the Black professional acting community and does so much for these folks, and makes comedies that I don't know, I hate to say normalized, but he does so much. And the only thing we can think about are there is the scale, and I've had people on the show who are friends.
Harvey Weinstein made great movies too, but it has nothing to do with in their private lives how they behaved. They behaved criminally in their private lives, and they are being brought to justice for that. It has nothing to do with what they did, but unfortunately, it's anybody who owns slaves goes through this. It's the same thing. It's like, yes, but Thomas Jefferson, yes, but he owned slaves. Yes, but he was Thomas Jefferson. So
at first I thought you said who owned suede, like
suede. Oh, lots of, really. Well, buckskin fringe.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Every now and then, every 30 years for about a year, it'll be in
ultra suede.
Ultra suede.
He owned ultra slaves. Speech.
When you do comedy for as long as you've done it, you've surely written jokes. You look back and like, oh, that's regrettable. But why are we doing things like taking jokes from 50 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever it is? Why are we digging up Laura Ingalls Wilder and shaking her around and calling her a racist when the lady's been dead almost 70 years, So why are we doing these things?
I guess because they are inculcated in our society, and there are people who say you have to put them in perspective. Everything is in context.
Okay.
And they dig up the context. If you, as a journalist, I learned if you dig deep enough, you find something about anybody. So,
yeah.
I think there are degrees of it. There's degrees of wokeness that are. I was going to say profitable. That's the wrong word. There are degrees of wokeness that are reasonable, that shed light on stuff that needs to be shed on. At the same time, everything has to be in context. I mean, I love Turner Classic Movies, and the funniest thing in the world now is watching Turner Classic, watching them apologize or explain the context of Gone with the Wind or Breakfast at Tiffany's or any of these things that were obviously over the top and inaccurate depictions of things. But the alternative is cancellation, and instead of cancellation, you say contextualization. You say this is why this was done this way, and this was how it was, and we appreciate it for what it is. I mean, you look at Hattie McDaniel, who played Mammy, and it's a caricature character, but she's brilliant in it, and it's funny and it works, and it also breaks your heart at the same time. And she won an Academy Award in 1939, where no black person had ever done that. No black person did that for many, many years after. So there's something to be said contextually about it. In addition to all the negative stuff that's to be said about it, there is something important to be said about it, and it needs to be seen. It needs to be seen in context.
And has this kind of critique always happened? And like, this is just the latest version of it. And
people have always been offended, but they didn't have a voice. They didn't have a voice. And I think it was a combination of the pandemic, which a lot of people sitting at home on the lockdown agitated, and also BLM happened. And when BLM happened, I mean, it brought things because it was all so obvious and all on video for everybody to see. And it was symbolic of what generally was going on, is that this stuff is happening and nobody says anything about it. And it's been going on for years in the arts. And Me Too, it was a perfect storm of all of those movements.
It's hard to even understand what to believe anymore. A lot of comedians are getting kicked off of TV shows and that kind of thing for whatever kind of behavior that someone finds uncomfortable. And I don't mean to minimize bad behavior, but I don't know what bad behavior is. I don't know who to believe anymore because there's so much chicanery and things that are beside.
Well, of course. I mean, when they have, there's a privacy issue. Somebody, it bothers me when an accusation is leveled and somebody is canceled off of an accusation. There's no due process. But in two recent cases, in Fred Savage and Frank Langella, they both had investigations. But Frank is putting their Netflix's feet to the fire. He's saying this was not a real investigation. And I don't know what Fred Savage said. Frank is no friend of mine, and he's a very theatrical guy, and he's 84 years old. So it's kind of like, Andrew Cuomo, I mean, who's not 84 years old, but there's a certain kind of expressive Italian guy of a certain age,
right,
who behaves in a way which has suddenly become unacceptable. It was the kind of thing where women would go, "Oh, he's Italian, and now they kind of go, "No, I'm sorry, you're not allowed to be that anymore." And these guys get caught in between that stuff. But I think that his point that the investigation was not for real is valid and worth investigating.
Yeah.
So once I mean, you assume that once things have been vetted and the decision has been reached, there was a serious foundation to the accusations. What always made me crazy, and still makes me crazy, is when they point a finger and suddenly somebody's out of a job just because a finger was pointed.
Yeah. Like a Russian ballerina who's kicked out of the ballet. She's like, "I'm a ballerina, like, I'm not actually fighting Ukraine. I dance. I do this,
Oh.
I'm going to get back to the comedy thing. So when you're working, well, first off, you've been doing this for decades. Do you ever retiring, or do you think you're just going to go until you're done?
No, I'll just keep going. Why would I mean? Bet has a joke whenever I'm not retiring. You can't make me. The kind of thing I do, I can keep doing until I can't do it anymore. And what am I going to do that's more interesting? Quilt?
Right.
I mean,
have hobbies?
I'm going to go ice fishing. I'm going to become a grumpy old queen ice fishing in a tiara. No.
Yeah.
I'll keep doing this. Why not?
What is the pastime, though?
Listen, you get aged out of enough things anyway. They say, a couple of things happen. One is, that they're saying, well, no, let's not bring him in. He's too old school. And then, or you wind up having to go before a jury of 12-year-olds who are running the business, who don't really know, who know you as a legend and an icon, but they, what have you got to show us lately? I'm not involved in, I'm not on staff at United States of Al. So what, I mean, that's death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah. Yeah,
So I can understand why people who why people would just say I'm done. I don't want to, but I like keep going. The hell with it. Maybe after I'm writing a book, and once that's done, I'll say, okay, I've made every enemy I can.
Do you mind when you write a joke for somebody, Bet or whoever it's going to be? Obviously, their level of edginess is going to be different. Maybe they don't want to be anywhere near the edge.
That's
But
right.
do you write jokes where you're like, oh boy, I know, like Jay Moore's a friend of mine. He talks about how, like, if what I'm doing isn't funny, it's you. It's not me, because I've been around forever. I know what funny jokes are, and it's on you guys to figure that part out.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I haven't seen Jay perform lately, but um, a lot of the times have changed. Stuff that you would be doing about people. I mean, as I said earlier, fat shaming, you know, is somebody's a slob, but not a fat slob.
Right. Right.
So it's like that. That's because the times have changed, and of course, in that case, he's right, where it's on them. But he's in the service industry. If he wants them to laugh, he's going to have to adjust himself
Yeah.
in some way. But uh, I don't think that. I don't think it takes away from a person's vision. I mean, as you get older and you evolve, and things just change. The kind of stuff you're doing changes. I mean, Fellini went from being a realist to being a fantasist. So, and a lot of painters have the same kind of thing, where stuff they did early in their careers bears little relation to what they do later, as your view of the world changes. So, um, it's I mean, somebody whose view of the world hasn't changed is Woody Allen. I mean, his the personal problems aside, when you got the recent Woody Allen movies are like retreads of old Woody Allen movies, and for a while he had younger guys playing the Woody Allen character because he was too old to play it. Now he's gone back to playing the Woody Allen character, and he's really too old to play. But the movies have such limited circulation now because he's in woke jail.
He's in motion. That's true.
I mean,
Yeah.
and I'm a huge fan of his, and I mean, I look at everything he does, and he certainly finds things that make me laugh in everything that he does. But
Yeah. Boy, you said a lot of things about Woody Allen that I agree with. I had another guest on recently who was a dear friend of Woody, and Woody actually types notes to him. They type exchange actual letters, old timey and everything. And he read me a little expert. It doesn't really matter what Woody was saying. I'm not trying to reveal all that, but he's very critical of not only the Academy, but the stuff the Academy is recognizing as not being very good. And then the next thing I see is a Woody Allen movie where Owen Wilson is playing Woody Allen. And I'm like, why is Owen Wilson playing Woody Allen? It's not that I never believe that Owen Wilson isn't winning in life, because he just is so easy you look at him, you're like, this guy's got.
that was the last really good one, Midnight in Paris. That was the last really good Woody
I just
movie.
would have cast somebody else, and you're right, I would have been with you on that.
Well, he cast Leonardo DiCaprio, he cast Kenneth Branagh, he cast John Cusack. He's used a lot of different people in the part, which is clearly the Woody Allen part. So,
can Woody Allen make a good movie still?
Well, I think we just covered that.
Okay. Well, all right, the answer is no.
He'll make a Woody Allen picture is what he'll make, And
all right, fair enough.
It won't be very different from the Woody Allen pictures he made 50 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. When you look at Dave Chappelle, people talk about him being the GOAT. And I don't know you're an actual, like, you've seen all of the people who are GOAT category or GOAT class. Would you say that Dave Chappelle is the GOAT? Is he the greatest of all time?
I think he's quite brilliant, but I think he's kind of a poser. I mean, he just his whole stage persona is like, I'm hipper than thou. I also think it's strange that a guy who is a member of a minority would go after trans people. What's that about?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's better than that. And this whole controversy about him is about him attacking trans people, which he claims he didn't do, and he has because he has a trans friend, which is like hysterical, because it's like somebody saying, I have a black friend, so I can do all this shit about black people. I found that very strange, and I think that he's looking for hot button issues that he can deal with, but not in any real way. It's just because he has to do that, and that's when I say I think he's posing. I don't think his heart is in any of that. I think that when he did the 814 stuff, that was from the heart. That was real. But I don't think what he's doing now is real. I can't believe he really, really cares about fake pussy. You know, forgive me so much, but I just don't think so. But he's become the bastion of the free speech movement, and Ted Sarandos rallied around him, probably because he marketing forces. He does very well for Netflix, but I just thought it was an unfortunate thing to rally around. I was reminded years ago there was a writer named Radcliffe Hall who was a lesbian, and she wrote a book called The Well of Loneliness, which struck me as being like, what a metaphor. And she was banned in Britain, and she was put on trial and all that. And all the gay writers, who of course were all underground because you couldn't be out back then, but they all kind of got together. And I remember Noel Coward saying to somebody, "Isn't it a shame that we all have to put our lives on the line for this mediocre writer?" And I mean, they really weren't interested in this book about her lesbian things. They were, but it was a cause celeb. And in the same way, I feel like coming to Dave Chappelle's support, because as he makes fun of trans people, strikes me as being a Pyrrhic victory. I agree with Dickie. Richard Pryor was the GOAT to me. Dickie, who's been writing in.
Yeah, he's been chatting in with us. Yeah, Dickie's
he is. I've worked with Richard, and he absolutely was. Yeah, he was. But I don't know how Richard would survive in this environment right now. Because I mean, I worked with Lily Tomlin and Richard, and they did a sketch on Lily's show where Richard was a guest, and Lily was in blackface playing his girlfriend, a waitress at a diner, and I don't know how that would go down at this point. At that point, it was edgy, and I think it would at this point go over the edge for a lot of people.
Well, and I wonder if Richard wouldn't take the opportunity to really push hard and be, in this time, edgy and relevant, because, Lily Tomlin, also Gene Wilder, blackface, and
a lot of people did. I mean, Billy Crystal did Sammy Davis, Sure. I mean, but apparently you can't do celebrity impressions either, because Kimmel got into trouble for doing a celebrity impression. So I mean, it's like there's just no, and you can't. There's no context you can put it in, because the only context is a bad one. They go all the way back to minstrel shows, which they condemn on every level. They condemn the white people who did blackface. They condemn the black people who had to do minstrel shows because they put out a bad image of black. I mean, nobody's happy about that. So,
right,
one of those things.
One of the things that is incredible about Dave Chappelle, though, is because of his notoriety, he can put together these shows at the Hollywood Bowl. I mean, look, it's terrible that this person rushed the stage. That, of course, is horrible, but it's all anybody's going to remember now. The show we saw had Jon Stewart, and I'm not going to remember everybody, but Jon Stewart, Michael Shea, D'Angelo was pulled out of the woods or wherever he was at because he disappears and is completely unattainable, with Questlove playing drums and Raphael Sadiq playing guitar. I mean, this is just name after name after name after name, all out there in support of him. And that's that show. The next night, a totally new show. He's doing incredible things. Is that part of the GOAT status, that ability to get on the phone and call anybody and have them? Questlove said, I canceled the date to go do this thing with Dave Chappelle.
Yeah, sure. That's GOAT if you want to go there. Yeah. Listen, when Elizabeth Taylor got involved in AIDS fundraising,
right,
she was a GOAT. And I said that to her. I said, there is nobody on the planet who will not take your call.
Right.
I mean, I said even the Pope will take your call if only to discuss jewelry, because the Pope's got a fabulous collection.
Yes.
But I mean, that was the thing. When she came in, suddenly she put the disease on the map because everybody she called said yes, because she's Elizabeth Taylor, because she was a goat. So, of course, we didn't, the concept of a goat. I mean, we didn't call it that at the time, but that was before there were no EGOTs then either. So I always thought EGOT came from the goat, and they seem so similar alphabetically.
Yeah, they do seem similar. Absolutely.
EGOT begat goat. We can thank Rita Moreno for EGOT. She was the first one to publicize that.
Someone like Elizabeth Taylor, who lends, everything to a cause. And I'm old enough to remember when AIDS first showed up and we didn't know what to do. And we mocked it and we mocked, everybody was mocking it, but then it became really serious. So she lends her celebrity to that. Jimmy Carter has been probably the greatest ex-president ever because of his desire to do something more than be an ex-president. I mean, and I don't want to critique Dave Chappelle's charitable efforts, but charity is a big thing, especially when you've reached this level of influence and success and financial success. And I know you do a lot of things on charity, but do you see that as becoming a bigger thing, or has it always been this way where people who are very successful lean back and say, hey, let's help these groups of people, let's work on this?
Well, show business has always been about that. Benefits were invented by show business as a way to raise money for things. So yeah, and of course it's also all charity is a way for people to assuage their guilt about stuff they haven't done or stuff that they've done that they're embarrassed by or something like that. So, but it's for a good cause.
Yeah, it is for a good cause.
Listen, and that's how they passed the lottery. They said, yeah, gambling, which is bad for you, we're going to institute because we're going to use it to pay for the schools. So you can gamble now because it's for the schools. It's for a good cause.
Right.
These are the same people who outlawed gambling for many, many years.
Yes.
Suddenly gambling is good. Okay.
And let's not forget that when the lotto came out, they were going to do it for the schools. 10 years later, they're like, hey, we don't got enough money for schools. Like, didn't we? What happened?
So what are we spending it on?
Well, we rearranged that. We reprioritized the money, and it's like, oh, I see.
Well, it's also, I mean, Indians, pardon me, Native Americans, they gave them casinos.
Yeah.
Because out of guilt of because of what the white guy did. So and now gambling is good. Go gamble at an Indian casino because you're ennobling the lives of Native Americans.
Yes.
Okay. That's fine. I have no dog in this fight. I'm just saying this is why it exists. You're foolish if you don't think that this is why it exists.
Yeah. That's true. You are foolish if you think that. Hey, are we doing a good job overall? Are we getting there? I mean, so many things have changed over, again, my lifetime. I look around and I'm like, I think we've come a long way. Obviously, there's more work to do. But then if you go to another country, you're like, God, it's horrible here for this group or that group. I mean, even still in Ireland, it's like, you guys from the North are assholes. We hate you. You're all drunks or whatever. There's bigotry and there's intolerance everywhere. Are we in any way making progress?
Oh, I suppose. I mean, the arc of justice is long. I think it's 2 steps, 12 steps forward and 12 steps back. It's all of that. I'm very fond of saying it was 40 years from Barack Obama, from Martin Luther King to Barack Obama. It was 40 years from Stonewall to marriage equality. So things do happen. I mean, that was in terms of the arc of justice. That's no time at all. Of course, it's half of a lifetime for most people, but so yeah. I mean, things happen, but it's ever evolving. And but I also think that you're never going to erase hatred and fear of the other or any of that kind of stuff. And now years ago there were Polish jokes, and we thought that they were unique. But if you went to Britain, they were Irish jokes.
Right.
If you went to Australia, they were Kiwi jokes about New Zealanders. So if you went to Hawaii, they were Samoan jokes.
Right.
They were the same jokes,
Yes.
but they were the designated minority that you could
Right.
make fun of. Now that's changed. There really isn't a designated minority. I mean, because we've really parsed it down. You can make fun of people, but you're going to have to deal with the heat. Dave Chappelle. You're
Yeah.
going to have to. I mean, became the new flavor to make fun of, and so. But you have to be willing to deal with all of that. So it's kind of like you're piloting the plane and there's turbulence ahead, and you can fly above it or you can fly through it. It's your choice.
Because of where you live, you get offered to do a lot of things. I know I've been to the Hollywood Bowl, and Harvey Fierstein sang the part of Ursula, during one of the concerts when they had the Little Mermaid, celebration. And it was just great. I'm like, it's the perfect voice, and it's such a great thing. But you wouldn't necessarily cook that up if you're like, how we're going to do a show, and we're going to have this old gay dude come in and sing these songs, as a woman. So what is one of the weirdest things that has been presented to you where you're like, maybe I will do that? Because anything can happen in this area.
Wow. I don't know. I don't know what's weird that's been presented to me. I mean, I did Hairspray.
That's true.
Which Harvey originated on Broadway. But I don't know. I would have to think. I mean, nothing's been that weird. I mean, it's just I can't think of anything that's like been. I suppose if they came to me and they said, "We'd like you to play the husband and father of 14 kids," and you to do Cheaper by the Dozen. The next version of Cheaper by that's kind of weird for me.
Yeah.
But no. On the other hand, Clifton Webb, who was a big old queen, did the original Cheaper by the Dozen, and nobody seemed to be upset by that. So.
Yeah. And Mike Brady had 6 kids, and it's like all these different roles. So there's some weird.
I know, and he went off camera. He was another person altogether, but he was deeply, deeply, deeply closeted.
Yeah, and thank goodness that we're getting better at that part of it, where the closet is a lot more easy to get out of than it used to be. I feel like, and I'm not gay, but I feel like we've done a pretty good job of that. And we're getting better even still, and more acceptance, like sexual orientation, gender identification. Like we're getting better being like, what does this stuff matter? Like just
well, I think younger generations grow up in a freer environment, and they're not they're much it's much looser to them than it is to us. Yeah. So I mean, I think that's where it comes from. It's that they don't matter that much, and maybe they're into experimenting more. I mean, I keep saying everybody is bisexual until they're 30, and then they figure out what they really want.
Yeah.
But it gets me in trouble with confirmed bisexual.
Oh yeah, come on, you got to make somebody mad.
but then I say to them, "Yeah, you're a bisexual. What was the last woman you slept with? The prom? How bisexual are you?" Right. And then it's about really why. Okay, identify as that. As I say, I have no dog in this fight. If it makes you happy, great. Just my own personal observation.
This is a country where you can't do that, though. You can say, I am this, and we're all going to be like, as long as you don't bug anybody else too much, we're all going to be fine.
Well, it depends on what you're doing. I mean, now one of the great anti-art campaigns is the idea that only Jewish actors can play Jewish, only gay actors can play. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. So,
yeah,
I mean, it's anti-art is what it is.
Yeah. Unless it suits your sensibilities, you're okay putting it down. When Gil Gadot got put forward for Cleopatra, she shouldn't play. Well, first off, she's from a place that is literally 150 or so miles from where all that happened.
It is, exactly.
Come on, you can't get any closer to it.
The only person who could play Cleopatra now is Rami Malek. But then that would open up a whole other can of Egyptian worms.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. All right, man. Listen, anything you want to say in closing? I'm going to wrap this thing up.
Buy bonds. No, I have nothing. Nothing.
All right, stand by for 1
I have
second.
nothing. Oh,
hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here, are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much